Good evening. Special early edition of the show. Today, very special guest coming back, Ed Jowett from Shades of Vengeance for one tabletop game that I am pretty excited about. And that is going to be Alpha Kaiju. So, where'd you come up with the idea for a kaiju game? Because for me, this is something that's been missing from the tabletop space for a while.
Well, to answer that question I kind of want to answer how I come up with my games in general.
Okay.
And usually it's... I'll be exposed to something just through life being life, right? So, in this case, a good friend of mine, Lucas, said, hey, we should do a movie night. And me and him and a few other friends, we all got together and we did a movie night. And we watched some kaiju movies. And I'd been aware of the 90s Godzilla, and I'd been aware of the two legendary movies that had come out already. But I had no idea. I had no conception at all of just how insane some of the kaiju movies are. So he shows us I can never remember the name in a pinch. I need to really look it up and stick it on a wall somewhere. It was the one, it came out around 2000, and it involved Godzilla being trapped in the ice, and then aliens turn up and make all of the other kaiju in the world rampage, and Godzilla goes around and fights them all one by one. And then there's also this weird subplot with mutants, and yeah, no, it's weird. But we watched this movie, and I'm just like, wow, that's incredible. Like, if you're willing to let yourself not take it too seriously, the kaiju movies. Now, there are obviously exceptions. That Shin Godzilla, Godzilla -1. There are definitely other exceptions as well, but especially a lot of the older kaiju movies, even the mid ones, I guess I would say, they let themselves get a bit silly. And if you're willing to accept that they're a bit silly, and you're willing to sit back and have a good time, I mean, this was the same group of friends we got together on the New Year's Eve. This would be a year ago now, and we watched the Turtles movies.
Yes.
The Secret of the Ooze and Turtles in Time. Just ridiculous movies, just insane and ridiculous movies. And we decided that we were going to do this Godzilla night, and Lucas, being the expert, brought these movies. I got interested in just how consistently crazy these things are, because I refuse to believe, having only seen the one movie, that this was just a one-off and the movies were normally a lot more sensible.
No.
So, no, they're absolutely not. So I dig in and I go, wow, this is incredible stuff. Like, there is nothing not to like about this if you're willing to just not take yourself too seriously for a minute here. The legendary Godzilla movies are good fun in their own way, but they definitely try to take themselves a lot more seriously.
Yes.
And, aliens turning up every 5 minutes, planets orbiting black holes, and, just beautiful stuff that's just insane. So I started thinking, well, I don't know of a role-playing game that does this. I had a quick look around, and I didn't find anything. It's been indicated to me since there might actually be one out there that does it, although the individual who mentioned it couldn't remember the name of it. And I thought, well, I reckon I can do that. I reckon I can give it a shot. And I did a lot of research, which was a huge amount of fun. movies, obviously. I also went over the Godzilla animated series that they did in the 90s, because that actually was much closer to what I think Godzilla was supposed to be compared to the Hollywood movie. And I sort of went around and went, oh, okay, well, I like that. And if I was playing, I'd want to be able to have a character that did that. And I'd want to have a character that could do that. And I sort of put it all together and went, well, that actually works pretty well within the Era D10 rule set. But one of the other things that made this game design so much fun is I couldn't just use the same Era D10 rule set that I use for every other game, because Kaiju, I in the nicest possible way, I don't see them picking locks very often.
Probably not.
So most of the skills, I mean, I also decided to make the Kaiju more or less unable to communicate. Maybe roaring and can give vaguely an indication of what they have in mind. But I don't want interaction skills. I don't really want technical skills. And that only left me with some of the personal skills like stealth and so on. I thought, look, maybe what I can do is take those skills and actually combine them into the attributes. And I've had an idea for a long time for what I call Era D10 Light, deliberately a much more lightweight version of the rules. And this isn't Era D10 Light. It's a big step towards it. There are some elements in Era Kaiju which I don't think I would include in a light rule set for Era, but work in Era Kaiju and so on. Defense is a really good example of that, where the defense rules work in the same way as the rules in every other Era game. That sort of led me down this path of, okay, well, I ought to redesign the character sheet then to make this work. And I came out with this completely new design for me for a character sheet. It's a lot simpler. It's a lot easier to understand. And if you scroll down a bit, it's in there, in fact. It's very, very different to anything that I've done before for Sorry, I just added a whole bunch of stuff. Keep going.
I was going to say, I looked at this just a few minutes ago. Could have sworn it was right at the top.
No, it's under characters. It's right there.
There we go.
There we go. So, yeah, I mean, this is a much simpler character sheet to the 8 attributes and, yeah, that's right. Just checking myself. 8 attributes and 18 skills that normally you would have in an Era game. There are only 6 things you can roll with, and there are some derived stats that are useful and important. And I just looked at it and I thought, you know what, that fits, it works, it makes sense, and it delivers.
Yeah, I like that it's simplified compared to the other ones. Like if I'm playing, a medieval fantasy game or a superhero game or something like that, I like the complexity. I want to sort of get into the nitty gritty and build my character. When I'm playing Kaiju, I want to destroy buildings. That's what I want to know.
Right.
How many cars? How far can he toss a Winnebago? That's what I want to know.
Exactly, and it's very simple. And even though it's very simple, you still have a lot of choice here. So I took some inspiration in terms of character creation from, believe it or not, I'm actually all my life I've been a Sonic the Hedgehog fan for as long as I can remember, and that in the 90s there were some Sonic the Hedgehog game books, adventure game books, written by the name's gone out of my head. The gentleman who created Baron Munchausen. Name's you know the guy I mean.
Yeah, I know who you mean. I know.
Is it Gantry? No. I'm just horrible with names. But
he's the one I always forget his name for.
Yeah, I'm just terrible. Anyway, he wrote these Sonic the Hedgehog adventure game books, and they also had 6 stats. And I was sat down and flicking through one idly, and I just went, oh no, that's great. That's a great way of building a character. You get 5, 4, 3, 2, 2, 2. Take your pick. You got 6 stats. You're good at 3 things, slightly reducing in the amount of good you are. Go. It's just an incredibly simple way of building a character. No one can fail to understand what it is you need to do. You can do it in moments. Boost your health, or boost your strength, or boost your kaiju power. Whatever it is that you want to be good at, go. And then bear in mind everything else is going to be a little bit crap. But that's okay, because that's a level 1 character. You're supposed to not be brilliant. And then I collated all of the kaiju powers that I mentioned earlier. I decided that some of them were form related. So you actually get to choose from 9 different forms in the game. Maybe you're an avian, so you can fly. You're aquatic, so you can swim fast and breathe underwater, and so on and so on. And then beyond that, you have 1 kaiju power to begin with. Which I guess brings me to, I should probably talk about Alpha and Beta Kaiju, because that's kind of important to Era Kaiju. Godzilla would be a good example of an Alpha Kaiju. He has multiple abilities. He's armor-plated. He's got huge regeneration abilities. He's got the energy beams, obviously. His form would be aquatic, in fact, even though he's quite lizardy. He can swim and he can breathe underwater. So he's also got grasping hands. He can pick things up. And that is like 4 abilities, which I thought, right, but you're going to want to have enemies that you can fight. You're going to want to be able to realistically be a group of characters who can fight enemies. So your enemies are going to be Alpha Kaiju, who have these 3 or 4 abilities. I counted up Rodan and could only really come up with 3. But I would consider him an alpha, maybe contentiously, I don't know. Certainly, based on King of Monsters, that's contentious, but I'm going to stick with it. So, you play as what I call a beta kaiju, and that's sort of inspired by the Mutos from the first legendary Godzilla movie, or maybe even from Skull Island, the King Kong in Skull Island, and all the things he fights in that movie. They would all like be beta kaiju. They're a bit smaller, and they only have 1 ability each. So you play as this group of beta kaiju, the idea being that you work together, and when you work together, you are as strong as an alpha. So you can work as like a group to defend territory from an alpha who might encroach onto it. But individually, you'd be taken out, which is a good reason for, I'm going to say, mindless beasts to have affiliations with each other. So that's why I came up with the idea of Alpha and Beta Kaiju. I really wanted this to be a team game. And not only that, a team game where you're not going to be talking to each other in character. You're going to be doing things, and the others are going to have to try and interpret off what you're doing, what it is that they need to do as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I first started looking through this, the first thing that popped in my mind was, oh, this would be great to play at a pub. You don't have to like think of intelligent things. You don't have to worry about being embarrassed about doing crazy accents. And the more alcohol you have, the greater a time it's going to be.
Absolutely. I played it at I guess I call it a relatively drinky convention, for me anyway. Contingency, my favorite convention here in the UK. That was in January. I ran a session to give people a go, and everyone adored it. I had 6 people sit down, and they just went crazy. It was so much fun, and since then I've been thinking, oh, what kind of sessions could you play? Because this one was everyone had their own little region around a human city, and one of them actually lived in the city, like in a park in the city, because they were a human lover character. And then one of them lived in the mountains behind the city, and one of them lived in the desert on the other side of the city, and so on and so on and so on. One lived in the lava pit that's conveniently near the mountains, because these things don't have to make sense. It's fine. And what happened was a meteor fell from the sky, and it basically had a slightly toned down version of King Ghidorah inside. And the desert one, just thought, oh, that looks interesting. I'm going to open it. And so the others are all charging towards the meteor to try and fight off this enormous dragon, multi-headed dragon thing. And I thought to myself, okay, what else can we do? So Kong Skull Island is a really good example of, imagine being a group of kaiju traveling through lands like that, having to fight these beta kaiju who may outnumber you or whatever, but you're really just looking for a home. You're looking for your own territory that you 3 or 4 can share. I think that'd be a lot of fun to do as a, and then you are kaiju adventurers. You've literally just gone out and done the classic role-playing game thing. Maybe dungeon crawls are a little harder, but yeah, the idea being that you can do anything, really. You could do something like, I came up with an idea in a stream earlier. What if, a little like the movie I was mentioning earlier, you were abducted by aliens and they cyborgify you and then drop you back on Earth, on the planet.
Oh.
So you're now cyborgs, and basically these cyborg implants that they've given you, they make you stronger. But well, I was on the stream with someone else, and he suggested maybe it's a bit like Mojo Vision from Marvel Comics, where it's a gladiatorial thing. They're just sending you out to fight each other. My thought was, what if these are benign aliens, and what they're doing is actually they've given you all these cyborg implants, but if you actually start going on a rampage, you EMP yourself and collapse.
Oh,
which would be a fun idea, and how, as a majestic being, do you survive this horrific sort of modification of who and what you are? I think that could be a really interesting session to run. Definitely. I kind of want to run that one
now. Have you by any chance ever heard of a comic book called World War Kaiju?
I have, in fact, heard of World War Kaiju.
You have?
I've not read it, but I have heard of it. I come across it.
Oh, it is fantastic. It's by a guy named J. Ishiro Finney, and the whole premise. Let me just throw this here real quick. The whole premise is that, at the end of World War II, instead of the U.S. dropping a nuclear bomb on Japan, we unleashed Godzilla.
Yes. That rings a bell now, yeah.
And then the book goes through the Cold War, and the Cold War is an arms race.
It's an arms race of kaiju, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, now I've not read it, but I came across it during my research, in fact. It's a fun idea, isn't it? Again, that would be a lovely thing to do with Era Kaiju. Imagine being like the kaiju dropped in as special forces troops in onto the other side, and you're going through and you're trying to beat these alpha kaiju that they've got in the way to destroy the facility. Oh, that would be hilarious.
Absolutely. Plus, you could pick your favorite country,
exactly. I deliberately did not say which country you might be affiliated with. Yeah,
you could even end up with Kaiju Olympics.
Kaiju Olympics. Who can laser blast?
Well, every country sends their kaiju to see who
their
takes
best
the gold
kaiju
medal.
To do the discus throw, and who can throw the school bus the furthest.
So, out of curiosity, one thing I don't remember seeing, but are there any giant robots in the Era systems?
So, you would very easily be able to do Pacific Rim with Era Kaiju. Whether it's a robot or not really doesn't have a lot of bearing on most of the rest of the mechanics of the game. So it is one thing I've been considering for a stretch goal of adding that extra form of artificial, inorganic something. I don't know. However, I sort of had a vision for Era Kaiju, and it really was to be a kaiju, not a giant robot.
Oh, for sure.
So you can't in Era Kaiju. There are somewhat giant robots in Era of the Consortium, but not kaiju size. They're more, I don't know. Kaiju have a size scale, don't they? I remember because I remember looking up graboids from Tremors. And trying to decide if they were kaiju. And I asked my friend Lucas, the one who showed me the movies, and he said, no, they're too small. They're sort of size 0 kaijus. There's like a size scale, I understand. They're sort of size 0. They're too small. And the disarms in Era of the Consortium are too small. But one of the things that I have spoken about recently with a couple of my very close friends and helpers, we were at a London anime convention, and it was suggested that I might want to do a role-playing game, or a shall we say more of an adaptation for one of my existing role-playing games, Irabalam, which is a space fighters game. So you have a fighter. They're relatively large. They are designed as one-man fighters, but they also travel for weeks at a time. So they've got space within. And the idea was actually maybe that we do a Transformers-esque thing of they turn into giant robots, so they can duke it out on the surface of planets and such. And I suppose that would be the closest that I've come to giant robots if I were to kaiju-sized giant robots if I was to do that. But obviously Pacific Rim is something that I was very quickly asked for, and I thought, you know what, you can do it. If you look at the kaiju abilities that exist, you can absolutely do everything that I saw in Pacific Rim. It'll be its own way of doing it. I think if I were to do Pacific Rim, I would actually make it so that the robotic form was less durable than the organic ones, because that is very much the feel of Pacific Rim. I think, you know, the robots seem to get torn apart very easily by the enormous kaiju, and that's less true if you look at something like Mechagodzilla, I think, which is obviously very durable and very tough and only slightly ridiculous looking, honest.
Just a little.
I think that kaiju is one of those genres, like I was saying earlier, you've got to be willing to approach it with a sense of humor. And I think Era Kaiju is the same. You know, that joke at the top of the top of the Kickstarter that you've got there, you know, RPG has evolved. It's a ridiculous thing to say. It's a silly joke, but it definitely, I think, sets the tone of the game. And it can be comedic. It can be a bit more serious if you want to do it a bit more serious. I think that's less what I see in kaiju movies. The serious side, I mean. I think I see less serious stuff. And even the more serious kaiju movies are still a bit ridiculous. That said, I've still not watched Shin Godzilla, and I understand that one is a little more serious.
Yeah, that's... Wait, did I see that one? Oh, no, I haven't seen that one. But the original Godzilla was serious. It was a serious metaphor for World War II. But then it quickly went off the rails with the sequel.
Yeah, it went off the rails, but I got to be honest, I enjoy a bit of metaphor. You know, I enjoy a bit of real cinema. But I also enjoy just a little bit of fun. And having that fun there and being able to enjoy that fun, I think that's really important.
Definitely. Well, you know, why get together with a group of people and play a game if you're not having fun anyways?
There are different kinds of fun, and I wouldn't like to rag on anyone who likes a serious session with a serious storyline.
Sure.
This game may even be for you in that situation. As you say, Godzilla would be supported. I mean, imagine being some kaiju who are trying to defend Tokyo, for the sake of argument, against Godzilla. Godzilla the monster. The one that is that metaphor for World War II. The pain and the suffering. And you are the beta kaiju who, working together, perhaps you can defeat it. But it's really not that certain. It's quite possible that one or more of you will die in the attempt, and all you'll be able to do is drive it away for now.
Mm-hmm.
And you can very much play that very serious story if that's the way you want to go. I wouldn't like to rag on anyone who enjoys that. I love a
No, of
serious
course
story
not.
from time to time when I can really hit that beat. You can really tell a story unlike any other in a role-playing game group. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Equally, being able to have the fun, being able to laugh, I think to me that's one of the more vital parts of writing a game like this.
Yeah, and to me, it seems like a good entry game. If you've got friends who aren't really into tabletop role playing
Yeah.
games, they never played like this. Well, first of all, the rule set seems like you mentioned stripped down, so it's
Mm.
much more streamlined. And then, I mean, who doesn't want to be a
Who doesn't want to
giant,
be a
silly
big
giant
stumpy
moth, or
monster? Exactly. Who doesn't want to stomp the odd bus here and there and then go, oops?
yeah. So in this game, is there a way for the kaiju to evolve even more or gain more powers
In
or
fact,
get
there
bigger?
is. Over time, I should say I'm not a big fan of sort of strict XP systems.
Hmm.
So you can level up, and I've got lots of advice for the GM about how leveling up works. In short, I would suggest level up at the end of a session. If you think your players have done enough to level up, then level them up. And once you get to level 10, you reach the upper limit of a beta kaiju, and you're able to get a second kaiju power. That's the absolute
Oh.
maximum that you can get. You can never get more than that. I should say also, the rules for making an Alpha Kaiju are in there. They obviously have to be, because otherwise you can't make enemies as the GM. So if, for example, you had a small group of players and you wanted to do, I don't know, the story of the movie Godzilla versus Kong,
Mhm.
right? So, you've got two kaiju, they come together, they have a bit of a clash, but in the end, the shared threat is greater, so they turn on Mechagodzilla and have to fight Mechagodzilla together. If you wanted to do that, the rules are all in there. Alpha Kaiju are just bigger, more health, bit stronger, more powers. You can absolutely build some Alpha Kaiju and go to town. The thing that concerned me was if you got 4 people and they're all Alpha Kaijus, your opponent has to be so powerful that it almost feels like ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I chose to scale down the power of the players instead of scaling up the power of the enemies.
Mhm.
I generally find broad generalization, you know what they say, every generalization is untrue, including this one. I find that generally, if you scale down the players rather than scaling up the enemies, you have a better time playing the game.
Oh, interesting.
Just from pure game design perspective, if the alternative is the players are super strong, and then the enemies are even stronger because you're just building a godlike character at that point.
Yeah.
One good roll might take down your godlike character, and that's kind of embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We've all done it. We've all done it. We've all been a GM who had a character and was like, right, this one's going to be really oh god, he's dead already. So yeah, I generally like to scale back the players rather than scale up the enemies, because that means that you then have alternatives. You can do another group. I would love to do a session where they were exploring a place like Skull Island that just
Mhm.
has beta kaiju everywhere in their own environments, and you got to move through this place. I think that would be one of the best kind of adventures for kaiju, for era kaiju as a game. You'd go through and you'd have the skeletal ones, and you'd have the spider like ones, and so on and so on and so on.
Mhm.
And while the humans would get squished, you're actually there, you're fighting these kaiju, but they massively outnumber you because it's their home habitat. So, you're not fighting one or two, you're fighting a family of them. or a clan even.
Interesting. So I see once again, right out of the gate, you've already funded the project completely.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to claim the funded goal is a hugely impressively large number. That's not what I need. What I needed was £300 to make sure that I could print
Hmm.
a run of the books. I would like to print the books. That's what the Kickstarter's for, and I am more than happy to invest the money that comes in beyond that into more rewards for everyone involved. I think that should be what Kickstarter's all about.
Nice. And the thing that's impressive for me is it's already 103 backers. And while some
Mm.
people might say, like, well, that's not a lot compared to Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, I bet you every single one of this 103 is actually going to play this one, as opposed to you look at some other modules online, and you're like, they've got,
10,000 people, yeah.
yeah.
I'd like
So,
to think so. I'd like to think so. It's not a huge number, but also we're only 5 days into the project. There's a long time to go still.
yeah.
I'm really pleased and really grateful to everyone who's supported the project already. It's 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 a big deal to me. Size jokes there. It's a big deal to me. Every game I create is a big deal. I put a lot of time and thought into it, and I feel like having 103 backers only 5 days in, I feel like people are saying, yeah, you know what, yeah, this is worth a look. This is worth a try, and that's really inspiring.
Do you think maybe it's sort of a shift in general trends in the tabletop playing industry? We have talked to some previous times, it seems to go through cycles where you have like Dungeons and Dragons and then the like medieval fantasy role playing type game are on top. And then, they'll go out of fashion and people are looking for something new.
I don't know really. I do know that obviously Godzilla is more popular right at this moment than it has ever been, and that it's for me it's entirely of I'm sorry, the the yes, Rampage. Actually, I did a stream earlier. I was chatting with my friend Leo about the GameCube game Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee,
Oh,
which is
I don't know
hilarious.
that one.
It's you get to play as a whole bunch of different kaiju, from Godzilla to Mecha Godzilla to King Ghidorah to Mecha King Ghidorah, Rodan. You get all kinds of different characters, and you're just in this area, and you can just pick up buildings and smack each other with them. It's so funny. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so much fun.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of
Sorry.
the gameplay I can envision with this system.
Sorry, I was just saying, Godzilla has never been as popular as it is right at this moment,
Mhm.
and that's entirely a coincidence. I'd already planned Era Kaiju to come after Era Dead West really last year, before Godzilla Minus One happened, before I knew anything about Godzilla X Kong Forgotten Kingdom. Is that what it's called? The trailer just
Um,
dropped a couple of days
I
ago
think so. I think
for
that's
the new Godzilla Kong movie. Um, there's the mini series going on. What's the organization called again in the legendary Godzilla movies? I've forgotten. It's gone out of my head.
Monarch?
Monarch. The
Yep.
Monarch miniseries or TV series is going on. So Godzilla has never been more popular than it is right now or kaiju, I guess, in general. And I definitely credit some of the people who might see this and go, "Oh, that sounds interesting," to the fact that it's just in people's minds at the moment.
Mhm.
You know, I'd love to think everyone looks at it and thinks, "Wow, that's a brilliantly crafted game," and I definitely want to get involved. I'm not fooling myself. I hope that when people play it, and as you say, I really hope that every one of those 100 people will play this game when they have it. But I'm a realist, and I expect that a lot of people are going, "Oh, well, that's an interesting idea. I've never heard of a role-playing game that does that before. Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
you know what? It's not too expensive. I'll give it a go. I'll give it a shot. After all, $12 for a digital version. It's not
It's
It's
not
not
bad
a
at
huge
all.
amount of money, right?
Yeah. And then I saw one other thing I noticed, the pocket rule book.
Mm.
So you were kind of thinking of playing in pubs, weren't you? Something
I
that's easy
sort
to
of
travel.
was. I've actually got a copy of it right here. So here you go. Here is the relative to Ed's head size meter. This is the rule book. It's not very thick. It's about 32 pages long, give or take. I wonder if I can just it's a bit shiny. I'm afraid. Sorry about
It's
that.
here.
It's a little bit shiny. I'm sorry about that. You're seeing my screen,
It's all right.
but yeah, we've got
It looks good though.
we've got the rule book here, and yeah, I just thought to myself, okay, you know what, we can. I'm not going to skimp on the flowcharts and stuff. They're all still there. Is that the right way up? No, it's that way up. They're all still there. You know, everything that you would normally have in an era game. I made sure that we've got some nice artwork to illustrate the various parts. Because again, I think that's really important. I think showing that you care with good artwork. Ooh, the red one's my favorite. Haha. I like the red one.
Yeah, that one looks great.
He's cool. Although actually, no, that's a lie. I think the blue one's actually my favorite. The cyan one, I should say. He's also awesome.
Oh, he's cool.
Yes, my son tells me that is actually I say he. My son tells me that is Mama Dragon.
Oh, okay.
So you know he's 3 years old and he seems very aware of what kaiju are. He'll often run up while I've got something from this on my screen and just yell "Rah!" which is absolutely brilliant. It's good fun. So yeah, it's not a big rule book. It doesn't need to be for what it involves and what it delivers. It's got everything you need. It's got all of the forms. It's got the attributes, and obviously there aren't any skills in this game. It's got 29 kaiju powers. I think is it 19? I don't know. It's a number which I've forgotten, but it says it on the Kickstarter. It's got weapons, so it's got all the different kinds of weapons you can use and throw at people. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed art directing this one because what I did is I told the artist, look, I want it to look like someone sketched this onto the page.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the style we came up with, where it looks a little bit like someone's done this, you know, just done this in their notebook, as it were, with inks on the paper. I really love how these have come out. I think that they look very, very cool in the actual book in context.
Yeah, the whole thing looks great. I had a bit of a tiff with someone. Out of curiosity, what is your opinion on using AI art?
No. Okay. I have a more formed opinion than that.
Mm-hmm.
AI at the moment is training off art that the people who are training it do not own. It more or less takes that art and collages it together. I'm not okay with that. That is effectively copyright theft.
Yeah.
If someone were to take this image and cut one of the things out and stick it on another thing, it would still be from this image. And okay, AI art might do that at a much lower level, but it's not actually changing what it's doing. It's doing the same thing. And I'm not okay with that. I also think problem with AI art and AI creative content in general, you're not adding new ideas. You're taking the old ideas and just recombining them in a way that already exists. And one of the things that I find about human writers is even if I was told, go away and write a superhero universe, which obviously I did, I'm not taking bits of Marvel and bits of DC and mixing them up so you can't tell which bit's which and then delivering that. I'm going, right, well, I like this bit of Marvel. I like this bit of DC. I don't like that bit. I don't like that bit. I'm going to put those together, and then I'm going to add some third elements that are from me, that are my ideas that I've had while looking at these things. Oh, I would have done this differently. I would have done this like this. I would make Spider-Man like that. I would make Batman like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you get that with AI. I don't think you get that third element of it. You just get a remixed version of what people have done before. And at the moment, I run into this a lot with Grammarly, actually. I get communicated a lot by a lot of different people, and I've begun to be able to spot Grammarly because it doesn't phrase things in a normal way.
Yes.
And as someone who, prides myself on my vocabulary, I'm trying to use words that I can't think of now, which is just ironic. But in fairness to me, it is 11:40 at night, so I'm taking a pass on that one. My syntax, my phraseology. When I look at something that Grammarly's done, and I go, right, but what you're actually saying kind of annoys me because you've not quite got it right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if this is someone who doesn't speak English as a first language, I am a lot more forgiving. I'm talking about people who, I don't know, write emails every time with Grammarly, but they speak perfectly good English and they could just do it themselves. Mm-hmm. Or people who write AI job descriptions, or people who write AI answers to jobs, or people who write their dissertation with Grammarly. I mean, that was a headline advert for Grammarly for ages. And every time I watched that, I was like,
it's horrific.
Lady, you didn't earn your degree because you didn't write your dissertation.
Yeah,
someone wrote it for you. You literally cheated, and somehow this is okay because the law has not yet caught up.
Yeah,
I'm not okay with it.
No, I agree. I had a bit of a tiff last week with a small publisher, and his complaint was, he's a small publisher. He doesn't have money for art. He's been using free clip art, which is okay because somebody paid for that clip art in the first place. But then his argument was, I'm not paying rainbow-haired people who want too much money. It was like, oh my God, you make content, you make books. What if I took your book and I completely copied your whole system and I just like changed the name, I changed strength to like muscle power or something.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't be okay with that.
No. So. Although actually he'd have to be okay with that because technically speaking, apart from the actual words that it's written in, you cannot copyright rules.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Of copyright law. However, I definitely get your point. Obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I strongly feel that. Well, I mean, look at AI art and what it's actually done to the artists. I have artwork all around me. That it's all from my games and fantastic people who've produced this. But I'm willing to guarantee you that at least some of them started by drawing people's, I don't know, D&D characters.
Exactly.
Those jobs don't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's instead, where it's the worst.
Mid-Journey. Instead of paying artists, they pay Mid-Journey. Hang on a minute. You're just handing all of the money to large corporations. The artists will never gain those skills because they never get the commissions. Now, I might be super old-fashioned, and there might well be people out there who strongly disagree with me, but I don't want to be using AI artwork ever if I can avoid it. Now, there's probably one exception. If you were to train AI artwork purely off artwork that I own the IP to,
right,
it's still a little dodgy because clearly someone is losing out on that.
Well, not necessarily though, because I can see people think about an artist who's, sort of in their twilight years
Hmm.
and maybe their hands shake and they can't really produce art. They could either sell their catalog to one of these
Hmm.
companies or license it and say, okay, you get to train your model with my art for, I get whatever percent. I don't see any problem with that. In fact, I think that's in some ways a great business model going forward, and that would give artists sort of the incentive to create their own style. So, they'd be unique enough to sell.
That's a really interesting idea, actually. I think, yeah, I think I broadly agree with you. I think the problem at the moment for me, as I say, with AI, is that it's stealing from everywhere.
Yeah,
I read somewhere that something like 60-70% of everything on the internet is now AI generated.
that wouldn't surprise me.
That is terrifying to me.
Eh,
And I remember, people are going, "Oh, another good AI rant is wedding photographers." So
mhm.
I got married quite a few years ago now, and I had a wedding photographer. Nowadays, you have Google Smart removal and so on. You probably like this is large companies putting small people out of business,
Yep.
not because of not because there's a leap in technology really, but because you're willing to steal to make that work, and because no one's been able to do it in the past. Now you can just go and find images anywhere to train your AI.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
It's
there's no protection against it because it's not a thing, and laws have not moved quickly enough to keep up with the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the US there actually are laws for that, but they're not being applied. Like like
Yes.
many years ago, there was actually this lady who was a very famous painter. She did portraits, and she was getting all sorts of rave reviews. I think this was in the 80s, and then one day a photographer was like, hey, wait a minute. That's my photograph of John Lennon. And it turns out that this lady was taking famous photographs of people
And
and
painting
just
over them.
like, and painting them. So she got sued and the photographer won. And she had to destroy, all of her work because of it.
Ouch.
So there are rules about that, at least in the US, but the AI thing is so new. And of course, the big
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
pockets, they're going to make it tough, but theoretically the laws are already there to stop it here. I'm not quite sure how that works across the pond, but
I'm not entirely sure either. There's definitely a copyright threshold of 15% over here, which is, I believe, that's actually international law.
hmm,
Um, and probably she was in breach of that
yep.
because it was within 15% the same. Um, but yeah, the thing is that I'm really concerned about this world that we're going into where 60-70% of everything we read, everything we experience is AI, and that's only a few years after AI really became a thing. Like 10 years ago, it was much less
Yeah.
a real thing. And yeah, where are we in 10 years from now? Where's where's the creativity, or are we just rehashing everything that we already did? And I'm worried that it'll be the latter because it's easier.
uh it's easier, and then certain companies basically control your access because you
Yeah,
and I can't create our own AIs.
no,
So
no,
they're getting money off of work that they don't own perpetually. And then for me, the scarier thing is, like you're saying, just rehashing, but then there's eventually going to be a correct way. Like if you actually go back and look at East Asian art, traditional, like Chinese art, in the 1000s, they would learn how to paint, like, this is the way you paint bamboo. This is the color you use for it. If you look at Tibetan art, it's like, well, this demon has to be this percentage as big as the Buddha in order for it to be correct. So it's possible that we end up in the next 10, 20 years at a place where it's almost like, all music today is auto-tuned, and
Mm.
like you're actually shocked when you hear one of these singers actually sing and they're good. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize any of these people could sing. But I think that's perhaps where we're headed to, where it's just so homogenized,
I
because
think
like
you're right, and
that's how it is.
we even see it in the tabletop gaming industry, don't we? We
Mhm.
see this whole thing about D20 is the right way. That's what I
Yeah.
was told when I first started out. I was told D20 is right. Anything else is incorrect. Don't do anything else, no matter what.
Mhm.
And I remember I didn't make very many friends at that particular panel. Sorry, someone asked a question about AI art. And yes, that's the one. So it doesn't take random art, it takes art that it's identified to be similar to what it is you're
Mhm.
trying to get out. And
Yeah.
it takes pieces of that and elements of that and learns from that. This is how an arm looks. Okay, that's why they get fingers wrong so
Yeah.
much, because what they'll do is they'll take 500 different things of fingers and there'll be slightly different poses, and you'll end up with a sixth finger in a weird pose because it's sort of trying to do, I don't know, a selfie or something, and it'll have an extra finger because different people hold their phone in different ways while they're taking a selfie. And it doesn't quite get the number of fingers right. It doesn't quite understand there are 5 fingers and not 6.
Yeah. So
Four
it's
fingers and a thumb, before anyone corrects me.
it's not perfect yet,
No,
but
not yet.
um
But
give it another 5, 10 years.
well, I mean, there are already people submitting AI art for art competitions and winning.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The art Reddits are blowing up about it quite badly.
Yeah.
A lot of people very upset.
They just had, I can't think of the name of the company. Just I think last week they had AI generated video, and they had
Mm.
like the woman walking down Tokyo and everything. And I since we unfortunately are in an election year over here, I swear some of the commercials that I've seen are AI generated.
You know what? I wonder. I don't know. We are also in an election year, as a matter of
Oh,
fact. We're
I'm so
coinciding this
sorry.
year. Well, there's a lot of political talk over here about whether some of our major political figures will get involved in the U.S. election, or whether they will, as like election advisors and so on,
Yeah.
not like the public political figures, but the more behind the scenes people, or whether they will, or whether they'll sort of have to stay here for our election to be around. Because obviously, big bucks for being involved on the winning side,
Of
on the winning
course.
side of the presidential election, obviously.
But I mean,
Um,
think about how bad it could be. Like,
yeah,
what if?
put your opponent doing whatever the hell you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. Like,
Yeah,
what if somebody had a video of Boris Johnson punching a baby in the face,
yeah,
and
exactly right.
you see it on Twitter, and it's like, oh my god, and people
I
are
mean,
like, it's not real. No, I saw it. He punched the baby in the
yeah,
face.
like my eyes don't lie is the classic for people, right? I know what I saw.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I remember there was a French photographer in the 1860s who he photographed himself. Like at that time they would photograph people after they died, and
mm,
he did basically a selfie of himself, like in the position if he was dead, in a coffin in France. And the picture got out, and it took him like 6 years to prove legally that he was alive, because up until that point everything you saw was real, right? So, uh,
especially a photograph. Yeah, I mean it's proof, right?
yeah, and even until let's say 10 years ago, if you had like a really good photoshopped image, people would totally believe it. But I wonder if now we're going the other way, where people will just not believe anything.
I don't know. I'm not sure that you're right about that. I think people will tend to believe rather than disbelieve. I think what we'll see is more and more insane stuff. I can't wait for the flat earthers to get hold of this, to be honest. Because it's going to start being proof, right?
Yeah.
I'm obviously not a flat earther. Just you can probably tell from that statement. But it would be so easy to prove it. Oh, here's
Yeah.
the wall. I went to the wall and around the south, the
Yeah.
south
Yeah.
pole big wall. I think if I got that right. Here's the wall. Look, here's an image of it. Here's a video of me walking around and knocking on the ice and proving it's there.
I'm waiting for mole people attack France. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Mole people. Okay. Why?
It just sounds so silly, but I mean, if you had video, I bet you get some people to believe that.
Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had all that question around CGI way back, didn't we?
Mhm.
When it just got good enough.
Yep.
It's still not quite got to I believe it yet. Actual CGI, but making more 3D AI generated dead singers to tour with.
They've actually been doing that for a while. They've trotted out some sort of
ABBA
hologram for Michael
Journey.
Jackson.
They
Yeah.
did
Oh,
ABBA
yeah.
Journey over here. I'm pretty sure at least some of ABBA are deceased. So yeah, it's just it's sort of at the moment anyone can do anything they want, and yeah, I firmly agree with you. AI artwork in role playing games is just wrong. Unless it's again, if I was to hand everything that I have for Era the Consortium over, and it's hundreds of images, and train an AI off that, okay, fair enough, I'll run with it. I don't think it would be enough to train an AI.
Yep. Yeah,
I
mean,
like your hypothetical idea. I think that's nice. An artist that can't do it anymore.
sure.
Another
Or
artist
maybe
I
they just
know.
want to retire, or
Hmm,
they're switching styles. They went from like a comic book style and they say, "Nah, I want to make children's books for the rest of my life."
sure.
Nothing wrong with
I
that.
also know an artist who does use AI. He uses it to make like basically as a posing thing. Like,
Mhm.
oh, here's the stuff and here's where it would be posed. Give me 200 suggestions of what poses it might be
Yeah.
for this. And then he'll entirely paint over it.
Yeah, I things like that to me aren't that bad. Like if you say
No. Well, I
y
mean, once upon a time he would have played around with 3D models for a couple of hours, right?
exactly. So that just expedited, or even like let's say you're making a vampire game, right? And you say, okay, I want an image of the vampire biting the woman's neck, and I know I want to do it pen and ink. So you say, okay, give me one image of it in the style of Frazetta, and then you say, okay, same pose, give me in the style Bernie Wrightson, and then another one in the style of Mike Mignola. So those are three very different
Yeah.
ways to use pen and ink. And not using that as the finished one, but saying like, oh, I like this aesthetic versus that
I
aesthetic.
like these
Yeah.
pieces of this. I like the way they did the face there and the teeth there and the blood dripping, but they haven't done it so well in this one. And yeah, learning about building your style. If that's a tool that helps you learn as
Mhm.
a human being, yeah, 100%, no problem.
Yeah, I think some of the preparatory work, the pre-visualization work for research, I think it's good. But in terms of just like having it do the work for you, it's for me that's a no.
Yeah, for more and more, I see. I'm on a Mid-Journey Discord server,
Mhm.
and I'm just interested. I keep an eye on what people do with it, and more I see D&D characters being made, and I just think how many people have lost jobs
Yep.
so that Mid-Journey can get paid.
Yeah. Well, to make it even worse, you know, Wizards of the Coast had a couple of scandals with them using AI art. Now, in all fairness, a lot of the images they're trained on, Wizards do own, but it's still very distasteful.
Yeah, again, it comes down to there are ways of getting artwork. You know, you
Mhm.
can talk to artists and get non-exclusive use of their artwork
Yeah.
for significantly cheaper. Um, that's absolutely what this Godzilla image is. I've got a new marketing guy I'm working with, and he liked the RPG has evolved thing, so we ran with it. But he said, look, let's just buy this image of Godzilla because it's going to be instantly recognized,
Yeah.
especially right now. So we went ahead and we bought this image of Godzilla, and that's okay. You know, we're not pretending that we did that piece of artwork. Um, it's there. It's been bought, paid for. The owner is happy that we are allowed to use it. All is good, right?
Yep. Exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. It's are you stealing? And too often the answer for AI is yes.
Exactly. Exactly. We're a little too loose with the appropriating other people's materials, in my opinion.
I agree.
But getting back to Era Kaiju, so the campaign ends March 17. When around what time do you think people can expect to receive the materials?
It depends a little bit on what the stretch goals are. As you can see, the pocket rulebook's already ready, so that won't be a
Mhm.
problem. We've already unlocked 3 stretch goals at this point. The new digital game will be Era Hitman.
Oh,
Will be the second digital game added to this. That's a pre-existing game, so that's not going to be any kind of a problem. I am going to have to put together the bestiary, so that's going to take me a little while. Not
okay.
huge amount of time, but some time. Um, I think if I don't have at least the pocket rulebook and any of the digital extras out within a month, I will be very disappointed. I don't
Okay.
see any reason why that shouldn't be at least as fast as that.
So then it's possible people might be able to bring this to the family Easter gathering.
I reckon when's Easter this year? Yeah, I reckon that should be a doable thing. I'd like to
Excellent.
believe so. Maybe an alternative to King of Tokyo. That's something my family play when we
Yeah.
get together.
Ah, nice. Um. All right. So, wow, that's not what I was trying to do. There we go. So far 103 backers, totally funded. People will get their stuff. 17 more days. I think you need to do
And
like a
another stretch goal, which will double the length of the bestiary, is only a few £100 off. Actually, if you hover over the conversion there, it's at 2,000, so just
okay.
£284.
That's close. I'm sure in the next 17 days you'll find another
I'm relatively
284.
confident about that. I'm really hoping that we'll get to the point where I can justify making it a physical book. I like books, and I like the idea of a little bestiary to go alongside this that contains some cool creatures. And I have written up a whole bunch of new creatures that I would like the artist to do. I've agreed a price with him, and we're just waiting to see which stretch goals we get to because
Nice.
I have some fun ideas that I'd like him to bring to life. An anglerfish, right, that can walk
Oh,
on land and has like this little lure of some sort, and it just chomps you as soon as you go after it. I think that would be a huge giggle.
that would be awesome. All right. So, any last thoughts about the game?
Just it's supposed to be a game where you have fun. You were talking about stomping. or throwing buses or whatever. It's supposed to be a game where you have fun. You don't have unlimited power. You are a beta kaiju. You can be hurt. You can be defeated. But at the end of the day, it's about having a good time and being that stompy big creature that's stomping. So let your inner monster out, run around, and have a good time. There are so many cool stories. We've talked about a number of them. There are so many good stories that you can tell with this game. I hope that if you're watching, you'll go ahead and join us, because I know you won't regret it.
Definitely. So for anyone who's interested, in the comments pinned to the top, there's a link to the Kickstarter. It's also in the description to the video down below. Go check this one out. This one looks like a lot of fun, especially if you have, it seems like it's easy to get started. It doesn't take a lot of planning and setup like some other role-playing games would be. Like, just get into it, have fun with your friends on a game night.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for having me, as always.
Thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure to be back once again. I'm sure we'll be back again sometime soon. It might not surprise you to know that I've got some more games coming up. Working
I'm looking
on
forward to it.
for a couple right now. Hopefully I'll get those sorted out at some point.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming. Everyone, thanks for watching. I will be back next week. We have game module Gods of the Forbidden North Part 2, which I guess is a mega dungeon. So we'll check that out with its creator. And that will be next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. All right. So, Ed,
like good fun.
Thanks for coming. And good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.